Okay, we're recording. I guess let me start by taking a look at the Rick and Morty API, since that's what we're going to be looking at. And once you've done enough of these APIs, you're going to notice that they're all, I don't want to say they're all the same, but they're all very similar in structure and very similar in what you need to know to consume them. So by consuming it, I mean getting the data that you want. You might even hear a term like fully consuming an API, which means that you can hit any of the endpoints in any way with any search term, with anything, and get the expected results. And some of the reasons why I like the Rick and Morty API is, one, I like Rick and Morty. You know, I think it's entertaining. Two, they have really good documentation. And three, the way that they do their pagination is really, really good, but we're probably not going to get into that right away. So if you guys want, we could dig deeper at the end of the night, but for right now, let's kind of get started. So what I have is I have an extension called JSON View, JSONVUE, and if you go to like the Chrome Web Store, you can find it like this, just JSONVUE. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to do a GET request on here and then display the JSON data more directly. So let's start with getting a single character. And I'm just going to open this in a new tab here. You'll notice that it gives you all of the information the way that it's coming out of res.data. So what you're seeing here is what you can expect in res.data. And the first thing you'll want to look at to know whether or not this is something you can loop over is to look at your square bracket versus curly brackets. So square bracket is an array, like this episode, for an example here, is an array of episodes. And this res.data is an object. So if I wanted to do res.data.name, this would be Morty Smith. Here's what would come out. I guess from here, I'm going to go and make sure I'm going to install Axios. Did you guys have any questions on style components, or pretty clear on that one?
I think I've got that pretty good.
Excellent. How about you?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not going to really dig into that because I've done many videos on style components, and most people don't want to sit there and be in here for 3 hours before I get to styling. So yeah, if we don't have to, then that's fine. So I've added Axios. Let me open up VS Code right quick. So all Axios did was download Axios and put it into our package JSON, and then recompiled the package lock JSON. So in our package JSON here, you'll notice that we have Axios in here. Originally, it wasn't there. All of these here are just whenever I did a create React app. Pretty standard. I haven't changed anything in here at all. And so when I do the npm run start, everything's going to be a standard React app, nothing special. And I'm going to go through and kind of do a quick demo on basically how to break it, and start from there, and then we'll just go straight into your UseEffects and rendering in an array, which are the two areas you were say you need the most of. So if I inspect this and I just look at the elements, you'll notice they have, a doc type HTML. HTML language is English. They have some script that nobody can read. This head, meta character set, UTF-8, all this stuff in here, right? So, and they've got all these cool comments. Notice the use of in the tags above, like, oh, what is this, So where that file, where your HTML file is inside of your public HTML. And so what I usually do is, at least in a demo, is I'll just go ahead and just select everything and delete it. And I will make a new one by doing exclamation point tab. And part of the reason why I'm doing that is to show you that I can make changes to this file and they're going to affect the React app. Something like this. So we'll put in a div class container in here for good effect. So this is actually going to break everything. I'll show you why here in a second. So over here, if I go and take a look in the console, it's going to say create root target container is not a DOM element. So there's something wrong in our script itself. But if I actually go into the elements, you'll notice that we still have the title that I just put in here. And the body has this div class container. But React doesn't know where to install itself, where it's going to mount to. And this is the big disconnect that a lot of people have with React, is that React is all just, it's generating the HTML and everything else. And to a certain point, yes, you still have to have a page to mount it to. In general, I'm sure there's ways around it, but the way that we're teaching it, this is the basic pattern that it's going to have. It's going to have an existing HTML file, and we're going to do DOM surgery to it right here. So if I go back over to my source folder and I open up my index, not CSS, index.js. So what you'll notice is that you have this const root react DOM create root document.get element by ID root. So either one of you, do you remember last week what get element by ID does? Like, oh no, I wasn't expecting to come up with.
Oh yeah, so we're just grabbing the element that's set by ID in our HTML.
Yep, but we don't really have any IDs named root in there, so that's the reason why it's erroring out. So you can just replace this with, like, a query selector and change this to say container, because that's what we have in our HTML file. So this is going to do the dot container here, right? So the query selector is going to grab this and then render the app. So if I go back over here, we're now back to that evil spinning radiation symbol thingy. Very 60s, very retro. So some of the other things that you'll notice is that, like, I'm not really going to be using the CSS. I don't really care about reporting web vitals. I just really want to render this app. And let's kind of take a look and see if this is going to break even. Let's get rid of this. Nope. I use a Mac also, so I hit the wrong keys a lot. So now if we're in here, let's make sure. Okay, so that's still working. So we haven't broken anything yet. Kind of confused as to why the CSS didn't stay loaded, but that's fine. So what this is going to do is this is going to render to our query selector whatever's in app. So if I open up app, you're going to notice we have a div class name app header, app logo, all of that stuff. So if we go in here, you can see it's div class app header. Here's our app logo thing, but not too much help from there. But that's just the basics of how React mounts your component. So I'm just going to kind of get rid of all of this crap in here because we don't need any of the React stuff. That's gone. Oops. So if we don't need app CSS either. So if we've got this as just div class name app being mounted here, you should notice that all we have is the div class name app in our elements, and that'll be the last time that I really push this on you guys. So, but that is the basic reactive way of how it gets rendered to an HTML page is through public. If you wanted to have your assets and have them where they're publicly available, you would put them under like a public. So like if you wanted to have access to a photo or something and have it where it's publicly available, you would put it there. Okay, that's probably enough of that. So let's get into a little bit of UseEffect right quick. And so if I go in here and I say, just a console log app is rendered. To begin. I've been using the Mac all day. It's horrible. You'll notice that we've console logged app is rendered, and it's only done it one time. And if I go in and let's say that I put in, we'll probably need a slice of state. We'll go ahead and do UseState as well. We'll do a slice of state here that says and we'll just say that we've got a characters, set characters, and UseState. And if I want to console log that, then we could just do it right there. So let's say that I have a UseEffect, and this is going to be demonstrating where UseEffect happens more than anything. So UseEffect takes a callback, and it also takes an array, and that's your dependency array inside of your parameters. So UseEffect always takes 2 parameters, otherwise it's going to continue to do it over and over and over if you do not have the second array here. Bad things happen if you forget your array. And we'll just do something here where we're going to do characters, and then I'm going to set a character in here. And we'll say name. I can have my first name with a capital. There we go. So we've got a set character is an array with one object inside of it. And let's do another one. We'll do name. We'll do Casey. Right. So I'm also going to show you some weirdness inside of here. And we're going to say before set character, and we're going to do one here for after set characters. Plural. So if I save this, you'll notice some really weird behavior. Is you're going to see this app is rendered. Then you've got an app is rendered again. Now let me just refresh this. That makes less sense. Okay, so app is rendered, and you've got an empty array. You've got before set characters, which is an empty array, and then this is after we've set the characters. You now have an empty array. So the reason why you have this is that when you run the set characters function, it doesn't set the characters immediately. It sets it for the next render. And when you have it in a UseEffect like this, it says, hey, I need to re-render anything where this set characters is there. So it refreshes the page basically and renders it again with the correct information. So you can't really set your characters and log it out immediately after it because it hasn't happened yet. You're console logging the previous state. So at that point, we would call it stale state. Now I know I've lost something. Does that make sense or no?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Okay. So that's one of the things that you can do with a UseEffect. And the other one would be like, say that you had, let's say page, set page. Now, this will be a useful example here in a little bit. So we'll actually make this the number 1. So we'll have another UseEffect here. And on this one, we're going to be passing in our callback like usual and our dependency array, but we're going to put page in here. So let's say that page changes. All right, so let's say the page changes. Let me go over here and refresh the page. This is going to run one time, guaranteed, at the end of the render cycle. So when you look at this, so you've got the app is rendered, which is happening right here. So line 8. You've got before and after set characters, which I'm just going to get rid of the after set characters because it's just an example to show you that if you try to console log your characters after you've set characters and it's not on the next render, it's not going to be what you expect. Refresh this again. So app is rendered goes before set characters, and then it console logs this page right here. So this console log page is going to re-render if we run set page. So here in a second, I guess we could probably put a button to increment the page. Might be a good idea. So yeah, of course, I'm going to rename this to a JSX so I don't lose my mind. Okay, so when I renamed app to app.jsx, it's still a JavaScript file, but allows me to do things like that instead of me typing out, less than button greater than less than slash button greater than. Like it just helps me for losing my mind over this. So we'll say add to page. And we'll just write a onClick here. So now this onClick is going to run this function right here. And all we're going to do is set page, and we're going to take page plus hidden the wrong keys. All right, so now I have this button. So if I add to the page, it's going to run that UseEffect again, and you will see page come up again. So let's make this a little more useful so we can tell which page we're on. Page, put a space in there, and then page. Okay. So let's refresh. So we're on page 1. If I click on add to page, page is now 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And if we wanted to, we could have one that says subtract from page. So we'll do page minus 1 and call this subtract from. So we'll subtract from page for page 0, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I add, then we're back up. So you can see in the console logs that we are getting different pages with each one of these button pushes. So you're probably asking yourself right now, Brian, that's not very useful. You're just console logging out. Let me show you something right quick in the Rick and Morty API. So we've got this single character. So this would be like if we wanted to make a component to display a single character, you might call it character, for example, the component. And you might use name Morty Smith is a male human who is alive. So you would need name, status, species, and gender in order to make that sentence. So let me just kind of copy this for a second. And I'm going to put it in here. So it looks prettier so I can read it even. And we're going to get rid of Casey. Sorry, Casey. All right, so set characters. So set characters is being run. We're adding in an ID, a name, a status, a species. I guess we don't really need the type, right? And let's just put this in here where we've got a map on characters. So first thing that we have to do is we need to break out of JSX mode by using curly braces. And then we can do characters.map. So just like with any map, it's going to return 2 pieces of data into your callback in here. You've got your object itself, or whatever your element is. In this case, I'm going to call it a character and say an index. And if I'm thinking about the type of information that I want to return from this map, if I wanted to return JavaScript, I would use curly brackets. If I want to return JSX, I'm going to use parentheses. So we're going to use parentheses in this specific case because we're going to be returning JSX. I'm going to return an article, and I'm going to need some information for this article for a key. So the key, you want to have something very unique. And I'm going to do something like, I guess we could probably do app and then characters map. And put in index, for example. And that would be something relatively unique that you wouldn't see anywhere else on this page, because I basically said, hey, we're in the app component and we're in a characters map. So you probably wouldn't see this very often. You might also put in another one in here for the ID. So this character.id is just 2 in this case. Am I going too fast, or are you guys ready to accelerate? I think that was a yes.
Good.
Okay, you guys are both good, cool. So now that we have the key out of the way, we won't have an error for a key for mapping over stuff, which is always nice. So we can start doing interesting things like a header breakout of JSX mode by curly bracketing, and that gets us our JSX mode. So we can do character.name, and let's do a paragraph tag, and we're going to do string concatenation for character.name. Is a oops, forgot the $. Character.species. Sorry, gender first. Something like that. So we've got character name as a character.gender, character species, who is character.status. So if I save this, this should render out some information. Go back over to here. Yeah, so we got Morty Smith. Morty Smith is a male human who is alive. So we're concatenating some information in a way that it makes sense to real humans. So let's add in some more information from the Rick and Morty API on this, because it's never fun without an image. So let's copy this and put an image in here. Yeah, I didn't hit the wrong key that time. So now we've got an image that goes to, I'm assuming, Morty, an image of Morty. So if we want to render this, we would need an image tag. And inside of that source, you'd need to break out of JSX mode into JS mode and character.image. And you still need an alt tag as well. So we should just do character.name. So now if I go back over here, we have Morty Smith. So we haven't even gotten into Axios calls or anything, and I'm already using these use effects like crazy, right? So what if I could actually combine these two use effects into one? Because I've got one that's doing page. We already know it's rendering once, right? And this one's just console logging the same information. So what if we were to move this down into the other use effect? There we go. So now this use effect does nothing. I can just get rid of it because it's not doing anything. Use effect with a dependency is still going to run once. So we know that set characters is going to run. It's going to put in Morty Smith into our empty array here. And it still works just fine. I can still click on the page. It goes up or down. I think I'm going to flip those buttons or else I'll lose my mind. There we go. Now that's more like it. Or I guess let's do something like just trying to do a minus. We'll just do a minus and we'll do a plus here. All right, so now I can visually see that this is subtracting, this is adding. So that's great. So we're able to set characters in the exact same way that we would with Axios. So like I could literally go here and do an Axios.get and put in something like, we'll get all characters. So we're going to go to character. And you'll notice that this is a little different. So you've got that res.data, but now this is still an object. And you've got these two keys. So you've got info and results. What happens when we click on page 2? Notice how we've got that question mark, page equals 2. So that's a parameter. And it's saying this page is equal to 2. So let's copy this. I want to kind of play with this a little bit. So what if instead of page equals 2, what if we started out with page equals page? So it's going to start with page 1 at the first refresh. And then we could do dot then. Your dot then always takes a callback. And it's going to have some sort of a result in there. And I'm just going to console log, console res. Make sure that didn't import something. Didn't. So our Axios isn't really doing anything. We're not setting any characters. We're not doing anything. We're still using the exact same thing. We're still console logging the page at the end. You know, we're just adding an Axios into here that does effectively nothing other than console logs what res is. So if I go back over here, fresh, and this is res. So you'll see res.data, which is going to be identical to this page here. Your info and results should be under there. So res.data.results is probably what we're interested in looking at. So when I go res.data.results here, you'll see it's an array of 20. So if I do res.data data.results. And notice I'm just console logging. I just want to verify that this is going to be an array. So if I save this, go back, I'm going to refresh because I don't like the logs. You'll notice that this is an array of 20 because it's got this square bracket here and the 20 here. So our 0th element is Rick, first element is Morty, second Summer, Beth, blah, 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 all the way to the end. So now I know you guys are asking, well, how do you get set characters in here? Well, let's just move it up inside of here. And I'm just going to get rid of all of the other stuff in here because we know that we're going to be putting in an array because we checked res.data.results has a square bracket. So we can just do res.data.results here. So now we have 20 items all in one. We lose everybody? You're allowed to ask questions.
I think I'm still good.
Okay. So what do you think is going to happen when I hit the plus key?
We're going to get a whole new set of 20 characters
Yep,
from another page.
Because what that's going to do is that's going to run our UseEffect because we changed page. Now, if you step through it, when we have changed page to 2, and it's running this UseEffect again, it's going to do Axios get Rick and Morty API character page 2. So if I go plus, we get another page. I didn't have to write any extra code to do that, which I think is nice. Favorite characters, Armageddon. That's basically everything, but I know you guys have questions. Comments, concerns, all of the above.
Can you show the dot map
Yeah.
section again?
So there's 2 things to a dot map that you need to realize is that first thing is your initial state. Anything that you're going to be using as an initial state, so like this characters, needs to be set to an array. If you don't have it set to an array, it's going to complain and say that you cannot map whatever characters is. It's not, map is not a function on characters. So if it's not an array, it's not mappable. So everything has to be a square bracket. Anything that you replace in your state by using set characters, because set character doesn't push, it doesn't do anything. It completely wipes out whatever was in characters and replaces it. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is that when you are updating that information, you need to verify either with console log or just know that that is an array, that this is going to be returning an array by looking to see if it's square bracket. So like this console log res data results, if I go back over here, you'll notice that this says that there are 20 elements and it has a square bracket whenever I'm logging it out. And that was before I even put it into characters or set characters. So once when you have those 2 conditions met, then you know that you can safely map it. And so effectively all I'm doing is I'm grabbing that slice of state, I'm dot mapping it, oops. I'm dot mapping it. So characters dot map only happens on an array, and there's nothing special about it. You could literally, have like an array with an object in here with whatever information you wanted, right? And it would map it. So all you're doing is just taking something where you already know that it is an array of objects that has this type of data in it, and you're mapping it. Your character is whatever you want to call it. So if you want to call it banana, you can call it banana. In this case, it doesn't make sense. Character. And index is just starts at 0 and starts going up. And then character ID is to give it even more specificity. Okay, so
Thank you.
So the other thing is on a map, if you'll notice that we're not using curly brackets here, we're using parentheses. So curly brackets for JavaScript, parentheses are for, sorry, my brain's gone, JSX. I have a cord wrapped around my chair for whatever reason. Make sure I don't break anything. So let's say that you wanted to make it so this negative button, this minus button, doesn't go any lower when it's, say, page 1, right? So what you might have is so we don't want it to go below 1, right? So no less than 1. So what you might do is on this minus button, there is a function in HTML called disabled. So if I disable this button, you'll notice it's disabled, but now I can't ever go back because it's always disabled. So disabled can be set to a truthy value. And so what you might have is you might evaluate whether or not your lowest page is less than or equal to page, something like that. So if I refresh, we're on the lowest page, so I can't click minus, so it's not going to go to the negative numbers. If I click plus, you'll notice I can also now click minus because that works. So now we also need to figure out a highest page. Now I'm going to set this to 1 as well. And we're going to do this exact same line here that we did above it. But we're going to want to make it so that it is, if page is greater than, or sorry, if lowest page is, or that's going to be highest, sorry. So if highest page is less than equal to page, then disabled should be true. So right now, both of them are disabled because we're on the first page and first page. But let's take a look at that data that we got back from here. Notice I have pages 42. Wonderful number, by the way. You can get res.data.info.pages, and it'll be the number 42. So what you could do is in the same thing, you can still set things. Set highest page to res.data .info. .pages. And now if I refresh, I can go up, and without me going to all the different pages, let's do page 41 for our page, our initial page. So if I go up one, that's the last page. Hey, they finally put the butter robot in there. All right, but I can go down. So we're on page 42 right now. 41, 40, 39, 38, etc. So that is this little trick right here is fencing off whether or not that button should be able to be clicked. And we're using information from the Rick and Morty API, which is the res.data.info.pages.
Clever.
So effectively, I just more or less completed the sprint challenge in 44 lines of code and some white space. 42 lines of code. So it's not particularly difficult, assuming that you're following the rules by don't be afraid to console log something. Don't be afraid to, plug something into the browser and see what it looks like this. Like this is literally an Axios get, and it's showing up in the browser. And it's just being translated to something you can see that doesn't look like a wall of text because JSON view.
If you call it like this in the browser, does that still count towards your rate limit? I guess so, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, if you're coming from the same IP address, it's gonna be rate limited. But I think that the sprint challenge tomorrow kind of has its own API built into the test, so there is no rate limiter. So the biggest reason why I usually see people hitting the rate limiter is because they decided to not put in this dependency array, empty or not. Take a big sip of water. So on UseEffect, if you don't have that dependency array, it's going to keep running and running and running. Or the other thing that they'll do that I'll see is they'll put like character in here because they see this linting error on the bottom. Let's see if I can find one. I used to put it in there. Maybe it doesn't do that anymore. Yeah, missing dependency characters, either included or remove the dependency array. Don't remove the dependency array and don't include it. The linter isn't smarter than you. Take whatever the linter says with a grain of salt. You're going to have errors, and there's ways of getting rid of, I think there's like an ESLint disable next line or something like that can get rid of that error. Since I'm not using set lowest page, I can actually get rid of that because I'm not needing it. It says set page is assigned a value but never used. Yeah, it is. It's right here. It's just not smart enough. So 2 linting errors here that make no sense to me whatsoever. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Need to watch me style it or anything else?
Nope. That's pretty much stuff else. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Looks like if there's no other questions, then I'll go ahead and stop recording. And let's see if we can get onto the record button.